In early July of 1953, Mr. and Mrs. Huggin, along with their 3 young daughters, left their home in Winnipeg, Canada for a 6-week summer vacation. They were headed to the girls' grandparents' summer cabin in Wade, Ontario, which is one of the more remote and wild sections of Ontario. And they were not too far from one of the biggest lakes in Ontario called Fox Lake. The family arrived late on July 4th, and then early the next day, all the adults decided they wanted to take the girls to Fox Lake for the day. So they began gathering all the supplies they would need while the 3 girls played outside the cabin. 2 older girls played in the front yard of the cabin, and Geraldine, the 5-year-old, was playing on the side of the cabin. At 10 a.m. that morning, the parents had finally packed up the car, and so they went outside, they got the 2 girls that were out front, and they went to the side of the house, and they couldn't find Geraldine. And so they go in the cabin thinking she must have gone in there, but after thoroughly looking through the cabin and not finding her, they started to get a little bit more worried. So they go back outside, and they're looking around, and they're yelling for her. But she didn't yell back, and so they called the police, and so they called in some professional trackers that were familiar with this area. They also called the army in Winnipeg, and for 3 days they looked everywhere for her, and there was no trace of her. On the evening of the 3rd day, they found footprints that they believed to be Geraldine's high up on this ledge in some moss overlooking Fox Lake. And the footprints indicated that this child was looking out over the lake and then turned around and walked away from the ledge down into the swamp where her footprints dissipate. And so the search effort was pushed to this swamp, and once again there's nothing. Then on the 7th day of the search, they find another set of footprints in the swamp, but they were these huge prints that if it was a human print, they would need to be an enormous human being, or these prints belong to some enormous animal. 2 days later, some of the professional trackers, they found a piece of her plaid shirt 2.5 miles away on the eastern shore of another lake called Long Lake, and within 24 hours they would find Geraldine's remains. The scene where Geraldine was found was bizarre. There was very little left of Geraldine. It was clear there had been significant animal predation, but upon closer inspection they saw that her clothing had not been torn and there was no blood on her clothes. So the animal predation had most likely occurred after she was deceased. But Geraldine's remains appeared to have been dragged out of a nearby meadow to where she was ultimately located. And so they followed the drag line into this meadow, and it led them to this opening where all the grass had been matted down. And investigators said it looked like something big had been laying there. And so investigators are like, whoever or whatever left that print in the swamp is the same one that left this print here in the meadow, and therefore is probably Geraldine's killer. But if you rule out the enormous person theory, you're left with the enormous predator theory. But when they looked at her remains, they ruled out animal attacks. The family was told that unfortunately, because there wasn't enough left of her, they weren't able to determine a cause of death. And so their best guess is she was probably mauled by wild animals, but they would even level with the family and say, honestly, we don't know what did this.